Hitler's right-hand man, the deputy Führer who believed that thoughts could move objects and that Britain would make peace with Hitler. Rudolf Hess was on a ride that ended in a spectacular fall. He rubbed shoulders with the Nazi elite, yet abandoned the Reich at the height of its power on a secret quest to strike a deal with the enemy.
The echo of war is heard loudly in Europe. The ruthless forces of the Third Reich have become indomitable and are destroying everything in their path. Adolf Hitler's regime is going through its moment of greatest supremacy when Rudolf Hess, one of the men behind the leader, decides to step out of his shadow to try to negotiate peace with the British. This surprising event, carried out in secret from the Nazi High Command, is one of the most enigmatic episodes of the Second World War and marked a break in Adolf Hitler's inner circle. The Führer repudiated his trusted man and described the incident as an act of madness. Rudolf Hess's mission was a failure, and he ended up being captured by the enemy. From that moment on, nothing was the same. Hess spent the rest of his days behind bars, witnessing how the empire he had helped build collapsed, until a mysterious death knocked on his door. In this new military history video, we will investigate his life, his death, and the fate of his body. Stay with us and discover the enigma behind Rudolf Hess, the last Nazi.
The last inmate in Spandau prison. An old man pacing the yard alone. Mystery and intrigue continues to swirl around his life and death.
The intriguing life of Rudolf Hess begins with his own origins. Despite being one of the great representatives of the Nationalist Party that exalted the German race above all others, the Nazi leader was not born in Germany. His father, Fritz Hess, a prosperous merchant from Bavaria, and his mother, Clara, lived in Alexandria, Egypt, when Rudolf came into the world on April 26, 1894. He was the eldest of 3 brothers who grew up in a well-off family. As a teenager, he was carried away by his affection for his family roots and traveled to German territory to study. His heart felt that this was his true homeland, and when he was 20 years old, he joined the army to participate in the First World War that broke out on July 28, 1914. He was wounded on several occasions, but the most serious one occurred on August 8, 1917, when he was shot in the chest. After being treated on Romanian soil, he was sent to a hospital in Hungary and finally back to Germany to complete his recovery. Still convalescing, Hess needed to get back into combat. He knew that enemy fire continued to stalk his comrades in a brutal and merciless manner. He requested that he be allowed to enroll to train as a pilot, so he traveled to Munich for training. His training began in March 1918, as German forces launched their last major offensive on the Western Front. However, Hess was unable to return to action as the war ended early. After the conflict, he enrolled at the University of Munich, where he studied history and economics. In that city, he attended a rally where he heard Adolf Hitler speak for the first time. From the moment he saw him on stage, he knew that his way of seeing the world had changed forever. He was as amazed as he was delighted and joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party in 1920, becoming one of the Führer's first followers.
Rudolf Hess was a devotee, one of the first to join the party.
Anyone who looks at the film of him can see this glowing fanaticism and total adoration of Hitler that Hess displays. It's almost frightening how much one man can adore another man for political reasons.
At this stage, he began to gain the leader's trust and quickly rose within Nazism. He was a loyal figure who contributed to the consolidation of the movement, even actively participating in the most significant events. Within the party, there was talk of a coup d'etat. The leaders of Nazism were planning to attack the Weimar government in Bavaria, and for this, they needed forces and resources. Rudolf Hess became a key player, introducing Hitler to former generals from the First World War who were willing to collaborate to take control of the country. The operation took place between November 8th and 9th, 1923, but it was a failure. As a result, several Nazi leaders were imprisoned. In any case, this event was crucial, as it consolidated the relationship between Rudolf and Adolf Hitler. During his days in prison, Hess helped the party leader write My Struggle, an autobiography that ended up becoming the ideological manifesto of Nazism. Although the Führer was the main author, his loyal servant played a fundamental role as assistant and editor and helped organize and structure the radical ideas of the future dictator. This book became the central guide to anti-Semitism and Aryan supremacy, that is, the seed of the future genocide. Little by little, the German people were sweetened by the Nazi propaganda that flooded everything. It reached their homes through television, also through cinema and music. Nothing was left to chance. The population needed to be convinced to support the vision of a prosperous country, based on the discrimination of Jews, who were blamed for all the ills of the nation. Finally, on January 30th, 1933, Hitler came to power, and Rudolf Hess established himself as one of the most important men in the regime. He was named Vice Führer, that is, lieutenant of the leader, which placed him among the most important leaders of the party. Although he did not have the same operational power as figures such as the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler, or the Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, he was seen as a symbol of absolute loyalty to the new chancellor. For many years, he occupied that privileged place within the Third Reich, but everything changed on May 10, 1941, at the height of German supremacy during the Second World War. The Führer's troops had managed to conquer numerous European countries, including a power like France, and although the United Kingdom had eluded him, this setback had not affected the confidence of the Nazi forces. In fact, they were preparing to invade the enormous and powerful Soviet Union. However, Hess surprised everyone by undertaking a mysterious flight to Scotland. Without Hitler's knowledge or authorization, his lieutenant traveled alone to British soil with the apparent intention of negotiating peace with them. But what was he really looking for? Did he distrust the German capacity for victory? Was he afraid of the United Kingdom and wanted to save himself from a fatal destiny?
And it looks like that he was probably, of the inner circle, the least martial of the lot. And yet we mustn't be too kind to Hess. He was a man who propagated and helped to bring to power one of the most evil regimes the world has ever seen.
Hess had taken off from Augsburg-Hohenstetten airfield aboard a Messerschmitt 110. He was wearing a leather flight suit with captain's insignia and carried some British money in his pockets, a map, and various medicines. The trip was an odyssey, and the Nazi showed all his skill as a pilot. He flew at just 15 meters high to avoid being detected by enemy radar. However, on his way, he encountered two Spitfire fighters. The Royal Air Force aircraft quickly began to pursue Hess, who maneuvered to try to lose them. He thought that at any moment they could open fire and shoot him down. However, the British, upon discovering that the plane was alone, simply escorted it to find out where it was going and who its mysterious occupant was. At 11:05 p.m., almost out of fuel and over Scottish soil, the German risked climbing to 1,800 meters and jumped out by parachute. The aircraft crashed 19 kilometers further on. Hess was slightly injured during the fall to the ground and was treated by a farmer, the owner of the property where he landed, and the one in charge of notifying the authorities. British soldiers immediately arrived at the scene. The Germans said he was Captain Horn, but his face was too well known to fool anyone. No one could believe who he really was. He did not even have the chance to propose peace or an alliance. The possibility of speaking to Churchill never existed. He went straight to jail. The next day, Adolf Hitler received a handwritten note from the man who until then had been his right-hand man. There he informed him, "My Führer, when you receive this letter, I will be in England." In the following lines, he outlined his idea and then concluded, If this plan, which I admit offers only a slight chance of success, ends in failure and fate is against me, neither you nor Germany will have to suffer it. You will always be able to decline all responsibility. Just say that I have lost my mind.
The principals are summoned. Bormann has no answers to Hitler's furious questions. How could Hess have flown off without anyone knowing? Why didn't anyone stop him?
Hitler suspected that there was an attempted coup against him, but when he became convinced otherwise, he feared that the news would spread to the world. So he called Benito Mussolini, one of his key allies in the war, to assure him that he was not seeking peace with the enemy. Still bewildered by what had happened, the Führer stripped Hess of all his posts, expelled him from the Reich and the Nazi Party, and secretly gave orders that he should be shot to death if he ever returned to Germany. The vacant post was filled by Martin Bormann, the Chancellor's private secretary.
At the heart of it was Hitler, incandescent with rage that his most trusted, loyal comrade from all those years back had just got off in a plane in the middle of the night and flown off without telling him.
The motivation behind the incident remains a matter of debate. The true intentions behind Rudolf Hess's decision will always remain one of the great secrets of World War II. The fact is that the action resulted in the former lieutenant of the Führer not returning to Germany until the end of the war. This means that he was never able to see Hitler face to face again, who took his own life on April 30th, 1945. Hess only left prison in the United Kingdom on October 10th of that year, when he was sent to Nuremberg to be tried alongside the famous 23 Nazi leaders responsible for crimes against humanity.
At Nuremberg, he pretended to be suffering from amnesia, but when the commandant challenged him with behaving in a not very manly fashion, and he owed it to his family and to his country to make a clean breast of it, the next day he stood up and said his memory was responding perfectly, and he wished to stand trial with his colleagues.
The American Army psychiatrist Douglas Kelly examined him during the trial and found that the accused suffered from a genuine psychoneurosis rooted in a paranoid and schizophrenic personality. He also claimed that the amnesia was partly genuine and partly feigned, but he deemed him fit to stand trial. His fate was thus sealed. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for crimes against peace and conspiracy. Although Soviet Judge Iona Nikitchenko voted in dissent from the decision, believing that a death sentence was justified, Hess was one of 7 Nazi leaders who escaped hanging. The rest were executed, except for Luftwaffe Commander Hermann Göring, who committed suicide the night before he was to be hanged with a cyanide capsule hidden in his mouth. Rudolf Hess was sent to Spandau prison in West Berlin on 18 July 1947. The fortress, built in 1876 as a military penitentiary for 500 inmates, would be the place of punishment for only 7 leading figures of Nazism. On 17 August 1987, after having spent more than 40 years behind bars, Hess took his own life. The 93-year-old man was the last survivor of Hitler's inner circle. A dark period seemed to be coming to an end, but it was not going to be that easy. Soon, the death of the Führer's lieutenant was surrounded by conspiracy theories that ruled out the possibility of suicide and claimed that the prisoner had been murdered. But who would do it, and why? The first thing to consider is his company, and many will be surprised to learn that it was non-existent. Of the 6 other inmates who accompanied him at Spandau, 3 had been released for health reasons, and 2 had served their sentences. The last to leave was Albert Speer, the Reich architect and a close friend of Hitler. He left the prison in 1966, and the vast structure continued to operate solely for Hess. In fact, the Allies spent thousands of dollars a month just to keep him isolated from the world.
Compared to a normal prisoner in a normal prison, he had considerable freedom of movement. choice of food, and that sort of thing, which a normal prisoner would never get. And so he had quite a free life within those confines. He was remarkably fit for his age.
He was kept there because that was the sentence. The sentence was a life sentence.
However, the punishment also seemed to extend to his death, shrouding it in great mystery. To try to uncover what was behind it, we must begin with the official version. This held that Hess had hanged himself with an electric cable in a summer house that had been prepared for him over the years in the prison garden. According to the report, the man tied the item to a window and hanged himself. He was found by a guard and taken to a British military hospital, where he was declared dead. While this story was initially accepted by the authorities, doubts quickly arose due to several factors, including the Nazis' history of strict surveillance and the circumstances in which he lost his life. This is how theories arose that Hitler's lieutenant had been murdered, mainly driven by the Hess family, who believed that it was not possible that a 93-year-old man, frail and physically challenged, could have carried out the hanging without assistance. The old man suffered from numerous illnesses, including severe arthritis and partial blindness, but not everything had to do with his health problems. Another aspect that reinforced the idea was the absence of a farewell letter explaining the reasons for his decision. To complicate matters even more, the theory grew that some powers, especially the United Kingdom, might have wanted to prevent Hess from being released after several requests to the authorities due to his advanced age. His imprisonment for more than 40 years had been a matter of controversy, and if he spoke publicly, he could also reveal compromising information about the Nazis or his flight to Scotland in 1941. The possibility of murder was gaining more and more support.
There were no witnesses. But conspiracy theories emerged that Hess was assassinated to stop him revealing embarrassing secrets.
This man who generated controversy in life continued to do so after his death. With all of the above adding to the mystery, Hess's relatives requested that an autopsy be carried out independent of the official investigation, which was carried out by a doctor hired by the family.
The purpose of the second opinion was to investigate if there really had been a trauma to the neck, how this had happened, and the question was, is hanging or strangulation a viable theory? The report came to the conclusion that the death corresponds to the compression of the neck through a rope-like implement. The report did not voice an opinion whether this was down to hanging or strangulation.
This pathologist, Dr. Wolfgang Spann, claimed that the marks on the neck of the deceased Nazi did not necessarily correspond to a suicide by hanging, but suggested that he could have been strangled by someone else. In the end, the second autopsy left more questions than answers, especially when the German doctor found that the body was missing essential parts for such an examination. The larynx and trachea were missing. The thyroid gland and the carotid artery were missing. Immediately, the theory of a conspiracy behind his death grew enormously, until those in charge of the official analysis gave their explanation.
Those parts wouldn't have been given to the family at that stage because they still hadn't been finished being examined. That type of examination takes days, and we certainly wanted to get rid of the body, so we handed it back.
Rumor and speculation followed Rudolf Hess in life and death. The second unofficial autopsy was inconclusive.
The search for clear answers became an odyssey. Meanwhile, new factors fueled the mystery, such as the rapid destruction of Spandau prison following Hess's death. Rather than turning it into a museum or historical site, the authorities decided to demolish the jail entirely, raising suspicions that they may have been trying to hide evidence. Finally, amid the confusion, another, if somewhat more far-fetched theory emerged. British surgeon Hugh Thomas, who examined Hess in 1973, suggested that the imprisoned man was not actually Hitler's lieutenant, but an imposter. It was based on physical differences, such as a scar the Nazi must have had as a result of his World War I wound, which Thomas said was not present. Although this theory was dismissed by most historians, it added an additional level of enigma surrounding the identity and circumstances of the death. However, the official autopsy concluded that it was suicide, and subsequent investigations by British and German authorities supported this conclusion, although doubts persisted.
For prison authorities, there was no mystery surrounding the death of Rudolf Hess.
I think these other theories, etc., are absolute rubbish. Anything else is pure speculation.
Hitler's former deputy died knowing he would never be pardoned.
And he realized from the rejection note coming back from authorities that there was no chance of him being released. He was there for life, and that was it.
Beyond closing this controversial chapter, the controversy surrounding Rudolf Hess did not end there. His body was buried in the family grave at the Wunsiedel Cemetery in Bavaria. The place quickly became a pilgrimage site for neo-Nazis and far-right groups. Every year on the anniversary of his death, hundreds of people gathered in the city to pay homage to Hitler's lieutenant. For local and German authorities, these gatherings were a cause for great concern, since Germany has strict laws against the glorification of Nazism. Because of this, in July 2011, the decision was made to exhume and destroy Hess's remains, which were cremated, and the ashes were scattered in an undisclosed location in the sea. This was how the last Nazi lived and died, Adolf Hitler's right-hand man, who generated confusion with his actions and mystery with his departure from this world. Without a doubt, the secrets of Rudolf Hess were hidden deep in the sea. Now, after having learned about this fascinating story, it is time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for accompanying us to the end. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.